So today, let's talk about why reading horoscopes for your sun sign might be misleading and what to read instead. This came out of a client question. She was Googling her sun sign to try and understand what Pluto moving into Aquarius was going to mean for her. And the information I was giving her during the reading was different. And so I thought it might be helpful to kind of look at a chart and how it's put together so that you know when you're Googling how these things might show up for you, how to read that information and what to look for so that you get the right things for you. So if you're new here, I'm so glad you're here. My name is Lisa Merrifield. I'm with Trails Edge Astrology. And on this channel, I give grounded and practical advice, or at least that's my goal, so that you can make a meaningful impact in the world. If you like this content, I would very much appreciate a like. That helps the algorithm know that this is useful, and it lets me know that it's also useful. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe, and you'll see me come in. I try and do something every week or so. All right, so before we dive into what sign, or how to use all of the information coming out to understand how the planetary movements might show up in the world for you, let's do a little primer on what planets are, what signs are, what houses are, and then what angles are. So those are things we look at as astrologers, and those are things that make it important or help you in determining what you see and what you're looking at. So sometimes the way we explain planet signs and houses is like a play. So think of it like a play. So the planets are the actors in the play. And of course, all of your planets are parts of you. But for this example, assume they're different actors in a play or on a TV show or whatever you want to use. So the sun is the main character. The action revolves around the sun. The moon is the character that feels all of the feelings and really is empathetic and can really, is really in touch with their emotions and everyone else's emotions. Then Mercury in a chart, Mercury in this play is the person who has access to all the information, who has all the conversations and knows where everything, how to find what needs to be found. And then Venus, for example, could be the love interest in the play. So does that make sense? All of the planets have a different role, and no matter where they are in your chart, what sign they're in, they always serve that function for you. So we have the planets. They're serving that. They're the actors. They are playing that role. We put them in signs, and that is actually the role that they're playing, or the way they're being asked to show up. So we have our planets. They do the things they do. We put them in signs, and they take on a persona that might be different depending on what sign it's in. So let's use Venus as an example. So Venus is always going to be about your relationship style. If you have Venus in Aquarius, for example, you might want to be married to your best friend. And I'm being stereotypical. These are overly general. You have a lot going on in your chart. If that's not you, don't assume that's the only way it can show up. This is just by way of an example. So Venus, always about relationships in Aquarius, might want to marry their best friend. Venus, always about relationships in Leo, might want to be the center of the relationship, might want to be worshipped a little bit. Again, being stereotypical to hopefully make a point. Venus in Scorpio might be the jealous type, so take care. Venus and Scorpio also will definitely want to go deep. They're not going to want a surface relationship. They're going to want to go deep. So you see how Venus is always relationships, but those signs layer on what clothes they're wearing, what role they're playing. So we have our planets, we have our signs. Then they go into houses, and there are 12 houses in the chart. And the houses are the places that those planets in sign show up in our day-to-day lives. So it could be that your Venus in Aquarius shows up in the 10th house, which is the house of career. So you might meet your best friend and marry that person at work, something like that. And again, that's overly general, but it could be some feel like that. Or, if you have Venus in Scorpio in the Venus in Scorpio in the 5th house, you might have a lot of capacity to have relationships that help children. That, like maybe some of the work you do is related to children or creativity. Like you want your relationships to kind of serve that purpose or hold that space. So hopefully that makes sense. So planets are the actors, signs are the role they're playing, and houses are where they're showing up in your life. So then to that, let's talk a little bit about the angles. So the angles in charts tell us where the horizon is at any given time. So, when you look out right now, there is a sign on the horizon, on the eastern horizon, on the western horizon, and it moves as the sun moves around the sky. So every hour or so, the sign on the horizon moves, and that's the angle. Those are the angles. On the east, it's called the ascendant. On the west, it's called the descendant. The east is also called your rising sign. So when you were born, no matter where the sun is in the sky, no matter what sign it's in, no matter what house it's in, there is a sign on the ascendant, on the horizon, and that's your rising sign. And it will change very quickly throughout the day. So hopefully that makes some sense. Let me show you an example, show you how this works, so that hopefully it'll be a little bit more clear when we look at the zodiac chart. So let me pause and get this set up. All right, so you should be seeing my horoscope, my zodiac chart, and I've taken out all the planets except the sun. So let's do that. There we go. Taking out all the planets except the sun, just to make this simple. So we have the sun in Sagittarius. So this is a person born at 7:56 this morning. And this is the sun in Sagittarius. And the rising sign at this moment is Capricorn. So when the sun was rising, the rising sign would have been Capricorn. So the sun is in Sagittarius, and the sign on the horizon would have been Capricorn. So this would have been a few minutes after sunrise this morning, because of there are different ways to use house systems, and I'm trying to use one that you will see when you are reading these horoscopes online. So this is called whole sign houses. And so just the sun has just risen, and on the horizon, the sign is Capricorn. So if we go an hour ahead, and there we go. If we go an hour ahead, my system is a little laggy today for some reason. If we go an hour ahead, we see that the sun, still in Sagittarius, this is a sign for Sagittarius, still in Sagittarius, is now in the 11th house, and the sign on the horizon is Aquarius. Does that make sense? So the sun is staying in the same sign at the same degrees, at 20 degrees, but it is moving to different houses, and your rising sign is changing. So we'll move again, maybe. So if we get it closer to noon, we see that the sun moves into the 10th house, and the rising sign changes to Pisces. So hopefully that makes sense. So the sun can be in a sign, and it can be in any of these houses. It depends on what time of day it is, and what time of day it is shows us what our rising sign is, shows us what sign is on the horizon at that particular moment. So hopefully that makes sense. So, if you are an Aries rising, the sun at the time you were born would have been in the 9th house. Or if you're a Taurus rising, the sun at the moment you were born would have been in the 8th house. You get the idea. So it goes on like that. The sun keeps moving as the day goes on, and as the sun sets. If you're born right at sunset, your sun will be in the 7th house, 6th or 7th house, right on that western cusp. So again, the take home is the sun can be in any house. It depends on what time you were born, and it depends on the time you were born. It can be in any house, and your rising sign is the sign that was on the horizon when when you were born. All right, let's put that back. All right, so all that is to say, when you're looking at a horoscope, your rising sign is what's going to tell you what house a particular planet is going to be in. So when you look at your sun sign, you don't know which house it's in, unless you know which house it's in, if you may know that, but you don't necessarily know what house your sun sign is in. Your rising sign is what determines the house system. So when you are looking at a horoscope, any generic horoscope online, the astrologer is probably making predictions based on your rising sign rather than your sun sign. They may tell you that you can read, you can watch this for your sun sign, your moon sign, your Venus, your whatever. But probably what they are doing is not looking at your sun sign, but they're looking at your rising sign. And because to do these kinds of horoscopes, we have to make generalizations. Oftentimes, they will conflate your sun sign and your rising sign to make it accessible to people who aren't who haven't been studying for 10 years or 20 years or 50 years, to make it more easily understandable. But what I'm telling you is that your sun sign can be in any placement or in any house. It will be your sun will be in the same sign, but it will be in a house depending on what time you were born. If you look at your rising sign when you're reading those horoscopes, you will have a more accurate picture, and probably the information that they're giving you will be better. So I'm going to pause again. I'm going to pull up Pluto because that was a specific question. If my sun sign is this, why does that not tell me where Pluto is? So back in a sec. All right, so, oops, I can make this bigger again. There we go. So looking at the chart, so I added in, so we've got the sun, we've got Pluto, I added in the ascendant-descendant line. So one of the assumptions people make, and this isn't necessarily just an assumption, this is the way many people read charts, is they do something called whole sign houses, but this definitely is the case when people are publishing horoscopes for you. So whole sign houses basically put the wherever the ascendant is, whatever sign is on the horizon, they put all 30 degrees of that sign. So 0 to 30, 0 all the way through 30 degrees of that sign is in the first house, and then 0 to the next 30 degrees of the next sign is in the second house. So I put the ascendant descendant in just so we could see where that is. So that the AC/DC, that's the horizon. And it's a little off because of this kind of house system, which is one that, as I say, lots and lots and lots of people use. And it's when you're doing general horoscopes, it's the one you kind of have to use to give any kind of meaningful information. So if you look at this, so if you have a Sagittarius sun and you're trying to figure out where Pluto is, so if you look for your sun sign, the information you find will tell you that Pluto is in the third house. So Sagittarius sun, Pluto is in the third house. That only works if you are also a Sagittarius rising. So if you are not a Sagittarius rising, if you are a Capricorn rising, so your sun is still in Sagittarius, but you're a Capricorn rising, then Pluto would be in your second house. Does that make sense? So let's just flip through. So if you are we'll say Leo just for kicks. If you are a Leo rising, which means you were born around 7 p.m. perhaps today, your sun is still in Sagittarius, still at 20 degrees of Sagittarius, It's in the fifth house, and Pluto would be in your seventh house. So you're a Leo rising. That tells you where Pluto is. So when you read any of these horoscopes, don't look at your sun sign. Your sun can be anywhere. It depends on the time of day. Look at your rising sign, because what the reader is doing is looking at that rising sign, and it will tell them where those planets are, or what, where things are showing up in your life. What houses? The houses are where things show up, on the 3D world. And so oftentimes that's what people report on. So that's why reading for your sun sign may not give you the right information, and reading for your rising sign or your ascendant will likely give you better information. So I hope I've made the case. I hope that makes sense to you, and kind of demonstrates why it is that it's so important when you're reading information online to really to understand what you're looking at, and that your sun sign is very, very important, but you have to know what house it's in, and the way to know what house it's in is by looking at your rising sign. So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to look back at my notes. Yeah, so the reason astrologers do this is because we can't know what time you were born, and we can't do a horoscope for people born at all times. And the reason we use the whole sign house system when we're doing these kinds of predictions. So for me, in my practice, I use a house system called Placidus. There are different ways to look at how the houses line up. And that's probably a topic for another time. But essentially what it is the Earth is a globe. And what we're trying to do is flatten that globe onto, a 2D image. And like with a map, when you do that, there's distortions some places, and so different people interpret the distortions different ways. So I use a system where that is a little different than house sign systems. So sometimes my interpretations shift a little bit. I like it better. It's a little more nuanced. It's not important right now. I'll stop talking about it. But so we have to make some generalizations. We have to make some assumptions when we're doing those general predictions, and they can be really helpful. It can really help you know where things are showing up for you. But reading for your sun sign is not going to give you the best information. Read for your rising sign. All right. I think that hopefully that makes sense. Let me know. Let me know if this is helpful. And again, if this was useful, give me a like. If you want to hear more, subscribe is nice. And enjoy. I'll talk to you soon.